A successful calving season is a goal of every cow-calf producer across the country. As with any enterprise, planning, preparation, and implementation are paramount to success. A live calf that not only thrives, but also survives from birth to weaning is critical to not only profitability, but also production of a safe, wholesome, tender, and flavorful beef supply for consumers. Welcome to this edition of the Beef Roundtable. I'm Dr. Ron Lemonade, your Beef Extension Specialist at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. The Beef Roundtable is recorded live and edited to fit the time constraints of the program. The programs are available at the Beef Magazine website, youtube.com, as well as www.beefroundtable.com.
And I'm Bert Rutherford, Senior Editor of Beef Magazine in Amarillo, Texas. Our first guest for today's Beef Roundtable is Blake Angell. He's a cattle rancher and partner in Lundgren Angus Ranch, located in Gove in western Kansas. He's been a cattle buyer for Meyer Natural Angus for the last 10 years. Blake received his bachelor's degree from Colorado State University, and previously he worked as the commercial marketing director for the Red Angus Association of America.
Our second guest is Dr. Larry Horstman, DVM and emeritus professor at Purdue University School of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Horstman is a board-certified theriogenologist and has a very successful embryo transfer business and steed stock operation with his son Joe, which operate under the name of Horstman Cattle Company. He has received numerous awards, including the 2011 PVM Alumni Faculty Award for Excellence and the 2013 Indiana Beef Cattle Association Outstanding Young Cattleman.
Blake, after the calf is delivered, then what? What do you need to make sure that you do to get that calf off right?
Well, I think that one thing we have experienced is, as anybody has calving cows, is you'll observe the cow lay down, have the calf, everything seems to be fine and good, and you walk away, and you come back around a little bit later to find a dead calf, only because the sac didn't clear the nose, or the calf when it came out had its head down. So we're, again, not every cow can be or every calf can be visually observed born on every operation. But for us, we're going to be very cognizant. We see those calves being born to make sure that their airways are clear, that the calves are laying out, that they don't have a head back or neck cockeyed. And we want to make sure that that cow gets up and starts ending to that calf, especially when it's calving primarily in January, February. So obviously we're going to have some weather issues we're concerned with. And so if we have a cow calve outside and it's really cold, we make sure we have the cow inside the barn, make sure that cow is up and attending that calf, because obviously we want to get that calf up on its feet and get it nursing and get that colostrum in it just as soon as possible.
Doc, when should a producer process a newborn calf, and what should you be doing?
Well, the sooner the better. I think, if nothing else, just stimulating that calf and getting it going, that helps in getting that calf, getting it up and getting it to nurse. It depends on the operation. On our farm, we routinely give our calves selenium injection. And we're in a selenium deficient area, and so we use the multi-min product that has selenium and copper and manganese and zinc on those calves when they're born. Some people will use an antibiotic on those babies if they've had lots of problem with naval infections or early infections, joint infections, those kind of things. They may use an antibiotic. Some places that have a real blackleg problem, On our farm, we give them a dose of blackleg as soon as they're born because we have a Clostridium type A problem. So we vaccinate them as soon as they're born with Clostridium. So that's basically, some people will treat the navel. I'm not a big proponent of that. I think if your calving facilities are clean and you keep things clean and tidy and fresh straw if you're calving in the barn, I really don't think it's necessary to put anything on those navels. I usually tell people if you're having navel infections and you've been putting something on them, quit. If you're having navel infections and you haven't been doing anything, why start? So I don't really know that it makes a whole lot of difference. I think that I would pay more attention to the environment than what you're going to put on those. And some people have advocated putting iodine, different strengths of iodine on it. I'm a Novosan fan. If I have a calf and it's born out in the dirt and maybe not in a very clean environment, I will put Novosan in. Open that navel cord up and dump Novosan inside it. Hold it shut, kind of squish it around a little bit, and then let it run out. So I usually use Novosan in them. So, but that's basically. Some people will castrate them right at birth. We sell some bulls, so we don't cut any bulls until we get a chance to evaluate them and especially to weigh them. But you can castrate them right at birth. Some people will dehorn them with an iron or with paste. I think the best time to dehorn is when you breed the cow myself. But that's basically some of the things that we do to those babies.
Blake, how important is it to get colostrum into that calf?
Well, I don't think that we can overemphasize the importance of that enough. The long-term health of that calf, how that calf gets started, and how well that colostrum, how quickly and well that calf gets that colostrum in him is going to determine the health and productivity of that calf throughout its entire life. I think it's vastly important. And so if we have some of these first calf heifers are typically ones we're going to pay extra close attention to. If we have some of those we feel like aren't providing the milk production levels that we want, we are going to keep some dried colostrum on hand, and we will intervene to ensure that those calves, especially in other cases, if there is a calf where we've had to give some assistance, maybe a little bigger calf that took some time coming out, that calf may be a little more sluggish, maybe a little slower to get up. We may intervene there as well because we know what that colostrum and the antibodies that come through that through the cow to that calf. We know how important that is, and to make sure that we get those calves off to a good start, it's very, very critical that they get that colostrum in those calves just as quick as possible.
Doc, if a calf's weak and or sluggish, or in some cases, some of these first calf heifers, they don't do a good job of claiming their calf, what's the best way to get colostrum into that calf? What's your recommendations?
Well, the simplest and easiest way is to just tube them, use an esophageal feeder and just put it in them. And we like the dried colostrum. You can save colostrum from, if you have a cow that milks really well, you could save some colostrum from that cow and freeze it, and you can keep frozen colostrum around. Or there are colostrum substitutes, replacement on the market. There's some are better than others. If you're going to pick one of those, pick one that's made from the bovine serum and not just dried colostrum or dried colostrum. But they're expensive. If you find a really cheap colostrum supplement, it's probably not the best one. So don't skimp on when you're buying those colostrum substitute products. But tubing that calf, or if it'll nurse from a bottle, but the easiest thing to do is just tube that calf and put it in them, and like to get a couple of quarts in that calf in the first 4 hours anyway, if you can, and then maybe a couple of quarts later if that cow still doesn't have it. I would caution people from getting colostrum from a dairy. That's be a great way to drag yonis onto your farm. Yonis is a big problem, and we don't want to deal with that. So I wouldn't advise getting colostrum from a dairy, because it's more of a problem in the dairy cow than it is in the beef cow, and there's several other diseases that you could bring on your farm too. So I definitely would not recommend getting colostrum from a dairy. A lot of people want to give a calf a shot of whiskey, thinking that stimulates them. I've heard this for years and years, and alcohol's a depressant. Don't give them the whiskey or any alcohol product. If your calf's a little sluggish, a little slow, get something warm in its belly, like warm colostrum at about 105 degrees. And I think you ought to monitor the temperature of that colostrum. I know when the wind's blowing out there and it's cold and nasty, but that stuff can cool off pretty quick. But I always keep a thermometer handy with my colostrum or my esophageal feeder, and I want to know what the temperature of that product is I'm putting in that calf. And if you want to add a little something to stimulate that calf, I put a cup of strong coffee in it along with your colostrum, and that'll stimulate them. But stay away from the alcohol. It doesn't help them at all.
Doc, let me come back with a follow-up question. You kind of talked about different products being on the market for as a colostrum substitute, but there's kind of the colostrum supplements, and then there's the colostrum replacers. Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, when you're buying these, a cost is going to tell you what the really good products they're expensive. But make sure that it's made from bovine serum, and many of them, it'll tell you on the package how many grams of immunoglobulin are in that, and you want one that's at least 100 grams of immunoglobulin, 100 to 150. But there's several of those that are on the market, and you want a colostrum replacer rather than a supplement. And I've got one that is my favorite, and I think if you ask a veterinarian, well, they'll tell you which ones are the good ones and which ones probably not really worth the time.
Blake, any final thoughts on how we can improve our chances for having a successful calving season?
Well, I think we've talked about a lot of very important aspects going into this. One that we maybe not have addressed up front is the health and restfulness of the producer themselves as calving season approaches. Everybody knows that the list of things to get done around the farm and ranch is always monumental, and there's always plenty of things to do. But I think going into it, producer needs to be mindful of the next 60 or 70 days, or however long his calving season is defined. That there's going to be a lot of attention, maybe some long sleepless nights. And I think that the producer himself, making sure he's in good health going into it, is going to be very important. But beyond that, I think that these young bred heifers, these females are going to have their first calf. I don't think it's out of line to emphasize the importance of making sure that those females are getting extra attention, being mindful of the bulls that you're using to breed those heifers, to try to minimize any potential problems they have. It's going to be a stressful situation having that very first calf, trying to figure out what's going on. And then making sure that you can do everything you can to provide assistance and minimize any problems that those young females have, I think will go a long ways into how they go through that first calving season, how they respond to that, the breed back on those females and the longevity of keeping that young female that you've got a lot of expense put into developing to get ready to ensure that she stays in the herd for a long time.
Doc, any final comments or recommendations, things that we haven't covered that producers need to know about?
Well, I'm with Blake, and take care of yourself. You know, some of these cows can be pretty protective, and don't get yourself hurt trying to process one of these newborn calves. You know, have a way of separating that cow from that calf, so she's not trying to hurt you. You know, we want a cow that's protective. We want a cow that cares about her calf, but some of them go overboard, you know, occasionally. So take care of yourself. Make sure that you wear a disposable sleeve when you're delivering these calves. There's some diseases out there that people that you can pick up from these cows, and so as Blake said, we need to take care of ourselves too, and keep so you don't make sure that you do wear a sleeve. And I guess the other thing that I always do is make sure you check for another calf. When you deliver one calf, it's make sure that there's not a second one in there, especially, you know, you get that calf that's kind of small and born a little early. But I go back and check every cow. I want to make sure she doesn't have another calf in her. And I also want to evaluate that reproductive tract to make sure that I didn't tear or bruise her or injure her in any way. And if I did cause a lot of trauma to her reproductive tract, I'll fill an OB sleeve full of ice or snow and stick it in her vagina and leave it there for about 15 minutes. And that sure goes a long way into relieving a lot of the inflammation and in that reproductive tract. Then hopefully you can get that cow bred back and she'll calve for you next year the same day. So, but other than that, that's it, I guess.
Well, while you guys were talking, a question came to mind in an area that we didn't touch on, and that's kind of that hypothermic calf. That calf that, you know, you find out, and, you know, it's one of those cold, blustery days. Maybe he's in a snowbank. You know, what do you guys recommend for getting that calf warmed up and going?
We're going to probably, first thing we're going to do is, like everybody else, we're going to throw that calf in the front seat of the pickup and turn the heater on high, blowing on it down below, and work our way back to the processing barn, where we can get some warm fluids in that calf. As Doc had alluded to earlier, I think it's important. We did some upgrades to our cabin facilities here just the last couple of years. We put a sink with hot water right in the barn, and got to kind of takes for granted hot water until he doesn't have it at his disposal. That's probably been one of those things we've gained a lot of value from, to attend to those cattle, you know, not have to run back to the house, fire hot, you know, and so just your facilities are such that you can get that calf in. We have one of those calf warming huts, electrical huts that we have right there in the barn too, as well. If we have one that's really in bad shape, we may put it in there for a little while as well and try to get that body temperature up. But I think warm fluids inside is going to go a long way to help them get that kind of responsive and livened up.
We hear some people talk about putting calves in the bathtub, and actually warm water submersion, okay, obviously making sure that the calf's head's out, okay, and all those kinds of things. But I've used warm water in a 100 or 150 gallon water tank, and kind of got that, you know, filled up part of the way, and got a calf down in there. And, you know, when you got warm fluid all the way around that calf, they do warm up pretty fast, and you still got a wet calf at the end of that. But that's kind of the challenge. But Doc, any comments on that?
Not really. I think Blake covered it very well. You know, your facilities is going to dictate how you're going to handle these. And I've seen all kinds of things that people have rigged up to get these calves warmed up. And, you know, they met these old, there's a lot of farrowing houses out there that aren't in use anymore that have all these mats, these heated mats that the sows and baby pigs You can find one of those, and if you just lay that calf on that warm mat, that really helps rather than dragging it into a shop or somewhere when you're laying them on a cold cement floor. You know, that those old farrowing mats really do warm them up pretty quickly. But the research says that warm water, you know, about 100-degree water is probably the quickest way to warm one up that's really cold. But I think Blake covered it very well.
For producers that are interested in learning a little bit more about the dystocia, there is a book published by the Midwest Plan Service. It's called Cow-Calf Production in the U.S. Corn Belt. And there's a couple chapters in here in that book. It's about a 268-page book, softbound, about 22 chapters in it. It's Midwest Plan Service number 66. It's I don't know, something in the neighborhood of $45 that some of you might gain some additional insight. That about wraps up this edition of the Beef Roundtable. Bert and I would like to thank our guest, Mr. Blake Angell, seed stock producer from Western Kansas, and Dr. Larry Horstman, veterinarian and board-certified theriogenologist from West Lafayette, Indiana. Please join us again next month for another Beef Roundtable discussion. It's going to be a great program. Until next time, Bert and I hope you have a safe and rewarding month.